Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1078, Friday, March the 20th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so today I want to talk about something other than coronavirus. Yeah, I'm kind of dealing with it every single day, and the last thing I want to do is talk about it in my videos. There's all kinds of news on coronavirus if you want to hear about that. My goodness. So I want to talk about some other things, and the thing I want to talk about right now is this book that's either just came out or is coming out from McFarland. She was Trump's first Deputy National Security Advisor under Michael Flynn. And she's out there doing interviews now, I guess, preparing for the release of her book. I don't know if it's out yet or coming out, but she's out there doing, the typical promos for her book. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about this, but just from some of the interviews that I've watched, there's just a couple things I want to drill down on that she's been talking about. Of course, the main thing that she talks about right off the top is the fact that she too went through the same exact type of abuse and harassment and threats from Uncle Bob the Executioner's team. They did the same thing to her that they did to Flynn and Papadopoulos and Michael Caputo and others, where they basically came to her, didn't suggest to her that she was under any investigation or that there was any real investigation going on, almost like they're coming over for a friendly chat. But at some point she starts realizing that there's more going on than that. She asks, "Do I need a lawyer?" They're like, "Oh, well, you could, but you really don't need one. We just want to ask you a few questions about this and that." But they keep coming back, and so she starts getting frustrated. Then at some point they begin pushing hard on her. They wanted everyone else to do. They wanted her to make up some lies about Trump, or go along with some things that they were suggesting that she didn't want to go along with, didn't agree with. And eventually it got to the point where they were starting to harass her and even threaten her that if she didn't cooperate and go along with the thing and offer them information, that she could be in some sort of legal or criminal jeopardy. So they use the same type of high pressure trickery, high pressure threats, and all these other things that they did against everyone else. And she said it really, was bad. So anyway, there's some things about this that I want to dig into here a little bit, because she actually says she's commenting on this meeting that we've talked about many times before. This January 6th meeting, January 6th of 2017, when Jimmy the Weasel Comey, the former FBI director, the former director of the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, this meeting where Jimmy the Weasel, January 6, 2017, informs Trump about the salacious parts of the dossier. And she makes a comment we've heard before where she says that she thinks that Comey was trying to blackmail Trump when he told Trump about the salacious parts of the dossier in that January 6th meeting. But she also talks about the fact that she was in the meeting because it was really two meetings. It was one meeting where you had Comey, Brennan, Clapper, and Mike Rogers were all in this briefing. And it was supposed to be like a national security briefing, but they were focusing that day on Russia interfering in the 2016 elections. And it was after that meeting that everyone else left and Comey had a one-on-one meeting with Trump, and that is when Comey told Trump about the salacious parts of the dossier. And she's suggesting that, in fact, that was likely Comey trying to blackmail Trump, because she said in that meeting, she describes the meeting as very frigid and frosty. And she says that all those characters knew that they were not going to be kept on in the administration. Now, certainly that was true of Brennan and Clapper, and of course Rogers was going to be retiring anyway. But Comey, I mean, he kept Comey around for a while. I don't know that he had intentions of firing Comey until Comey gave him cause. But anyway, in her opinion, they all felt that they were not going to be kept around. And so I guess that's why she's suggesting that maybe Comey was blackmailing Trump to say, hey, there's stuff's out there. It could come out. We know all about it. And almost like, as long as you don't get rid of us, we'll keep your secret for you. But if you do get rid of us, we're going to let this out of the bag. And that's kind of the way that she thinks that Comey and Brennan and Clapper were playing this particular game with Trump. And she says that Trump was very angry when he came out of that meeting. I guess he was. Now, she points out what we should logically take away from this January 6th meeting, we've all talked about it before, is that, Comey at the time knew it was all BS. He knew the Christopher Steele, so-called Steele dossier, was total BS when he informed Trump of that. And of course, we've always taken issue with the fact that of all the things that were in the dossier, the various memos of the dossier, which remember, by January of 2017, all the memos were out there with all the accusations, but Comey only chose to tell him about what Comey told Trump that day was that the Russians had video of Trump at the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow with prostitutes. He didn't even specifically go into the peeing on the bed or whatever. He just said that the Russians claim, or there's this story out there that the media has, that the Russians have a video of you at the Ritz-Carlton with prostitutes. That's essentially the long and short of what Comey told Trump. Despite the fact that there was many other things in the so-called Steele dossier, which would have actually have been things that would have been more along actual believable intelligence. I mean, this is just crazy stuff, which Trump knocked down in that meeting, and which the FBI could have knocked down very easily, if they wanted to. So, clearly, Comey knew that this was all BS. So, again, as we've asked many times, why did Comey go brief Trump and give him this little bit of information from the so-called Steele dossier? Why'd he do it? Well, it may have been to blackmail Trump into thinking, if I fire these guys, they're going to release this information, so I guess I'll have to keep them around. It could have been blackmail, maybe. That's a possibility. I mean, I think it's a possibility. But we know the main reason that Comey did it was to provide the news hook, because they had wanted to get the Steele dossier, so-called Steele dossier, information out there, but they never could because the media was afraid to run with it, because it would have been obviously resulted in lawsuits, and they needed a reason to be able to do the story. So the fact that Comey briefed Trump now made it a news story. And so Comey provided the news hook. And of course we know that the very next day or 2 days later, Clapper essentially tells CNN, and then the next day CNN runs with the story, and the next day BuzzFeed releases the dossier. So this was clearly a plot. It was clearly a plot to provide the news hook that CNN needed to run the story, and that BuzzFeed would then use to release the dossier. I mean, I think this is obvious on its face. You don't have to be, Columbo. You don't have to be the world's greatest detective to kind of look at these events that occurred on January 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th to figure out what the hell was going on here. It's pretty easy to see in retrospect exactly what was going on. I don't think Attorney General Barr was fooled. I don't think Durham was fooled. I'm sure they know exactly what was going on there. Comey, though, in that meeting, let's not forget another thing, that in that January 6th meeting with Trump, Jimmy the Weasel told Trump that he wasn't being investigated over the allegations and that the FBI wasn't out to get him. Now, why would he say that? Now, that's probably why KT McFarland thinks that it was blackmail. Because Comey's like, but Mr. President, we're not actually out to get you. Why would you say that? Why would you even think? Why would Trump even think, incoming president even think that the FBI director was out to get him? It probably didn't dawn on him at that point, because he's getting this information. It probably hadn't had time. Now, maybe a few hours later, thinking about it, that may come to mind. But certainly, in the context of in real time, in the situation, that probably would not be the first thing that would cross a person's mind. And that may be why K.T. McFarland thinks it was a blackmail. And essentially, again, it was probably part blackmail, but it probably was blackmail. But it was more important, the main reason Comey did it was for the news hook. Provide the news hook. Now, there's another part of this story that I think is probably just important, is the fact that prior to the January 6th meeting with Comey, Rogers, Clapper, and Brennan with Trump at Trump Tower, remember, this is during the transition period. Trump's still at Trump Tower when this meeting is taking place. But the day before, on January the 5th, there was a meeting in the Oval Office with Obama and Susan Rice. There may have been other people, but we know for sure that Obama and Susan Rice were in that meeting with Clapper, Brennan, and Comey. No Mike Rogers. Just Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Obama, and Susan Rice. There may have been other Obama administration officials there. We don't know for sure about that. At least I don't. But what has been reported is we know for sure Mike Rogers was not there, but that Comey, Clapper, and Brennan were there, Obama was there, and Susan Rice was there. And it was in that meeting where Obama asked who was going to be the one to break the news to Trump about the so-called Steele dossier information. Obama asked, which one of you guys is going to be briefing Trump tomorrow about the so-called Steele dossier information? Now, at this point, this is January the 5th of 2017. They all know that the dossier is bullshit. Obama knows. I mean, certainly, Obama, Clapper, and Rice and Comey would have all, by that time, they knew that the dossier was bullshit. I mean, were they bullshitting Obama too? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Obama knew it was all bullshit too, which means he was in on it. So this, what did Obama know and when did he know it? Well, he certainly knew on January the 5th that the dossier was bullshit, and he's asking Comey, Brennan, and Clapper which one of the three are going to be the one to give Trump the bad news. And then we, of course, need to go back and reflect on this interview that Bill Barr, Attorney General Barr, did with Fox News, Bill Hemmer. So this was this was an interview he did with Hemmer, I think, in 2019. I think it was spring, summer of last year. Barr's doing an interview with Fox's Bill Hemmer. And in that interview, Barr tells Hemmer that his office, that would be the Department of Justice, was looking into some very strange developments that occurred between Election Day and Inauguration Day. One, he says, was the January 6th, 2017 briefing. And he's asking, why did Obama give his blessing on Comey to brief Trump on the dossier allegations? This is Attorney General Barr saying to Hemmer, asking the question, essentially, that he and the Department of Justice are asking, why did Obama give his blessing on Comey to brief Trump on the dossier allegations? Now, at this point, Barr knows that the FBI knew at that time that the dossier was debunked, and that Obama must have known it. Certainly Brennan, Clapper, and Comey knew it. So this gives you some insight into thinking of Attorney General Barr. Now, he doesn't say this to Bill Hemmer. He doesn't say, yeah, what I just said. He doesn't say, they all knew it was bullshit. That's not what Attorney General Barr says in the interview. He doesn't say that. He just questions it to Bill Hemmer. It says, so why do you think the Obama gave his blessing to Comey to brief Trump on the dossier allegations? And he's telling Hemmer that that's what the DOJ is looking into. Certain events that occurred between Election Day and Inauguration Day, and specifically this January 6, 2017 briefing. Barr is very interested why the briefing occurred. With all the other things, serious things going on in the world that Trump should have been briefed on as the incoming president, why even bog him down or bother him or waste his time with a crazy, salacious story like this? And why did they only brief Trump on the salacious part of the dossier when there's other things in the dossier that, if true, would be far more troubling? And why did the briefing happen in the first place? Now keep in mind, as I said, Barr knows when he's having this interview with Hemmer, because this is like last year. This is 2019. Barr already knows at this point that the dossier was bullshit, that Obama, Clapper, Brennan, Comey all knew it was bullshit. Yet they're having this meeting in the White House, and Obama's wanting to know which of the three usual suspects were going to go do this briefing with Trump. So Attorney General Barr is very sly, you might say, in a lot of ways. If you watch him in these interviews, whenever he gets into the Spygate topic and the investigation, the Durham investigation, he's very, very careful about what he says, but he's kind of sneaky. You know, Barr's kind of a sneaky character. He knows everything. He knows everything that went down. He knows it was all bullshit, but obviously he's trying to, not trying to say too much, obviously, but he's very sneaky in a lot of ways, I think. Barr is. So I just, those are just things that obviously are going to come into play, and I'm sure that as a result of Barr's curiosity, Durham will have the same curiosities, and he will satisfy those curiosities at some point. We're going to find out. At least we're going to find out what Durham and Barr think about this whole thing. He's certainly raising the issue with Bill Hemmer that, yeah, we're awfully interested in why exactly this all went down. So you can bet that they're going to be figuring that out. And they're going to come to the conclusion, when you look at the January 5th meeting, the January 6th meeting, what happened on the 8th, 9th, and 10th with the stuff being leaked to CNN, then they do the story, then out comes the dossier. I mean, it was clear what the purpose was, and that was to provide the predicate or the reason for the media to run the story. That's like 1 + 1 = 2. That's easy. But there's probably some more things going on in the background, and that's what Durham and Barr are probably looking into. But let me tell you what my gut instinct is on this. My gut instinct is that Obama wanted this to go down because it was a personal dig at Trump. It was personal. Because, of course, Trump had raised the issue of Obama's birth certificate and whether or not he was born in the USA. If you remember, when Trump was American citizen or whatever, if you remember, early on, when Trump, it was probably even before he ran for president, but probably even after he announced, had questioned, said, yeah, there's some real questions about Obama's birth certificate and whether or not he was actually born where he says he was, when he says he was. There were questions, and that's what Trump was saying. There were a lot of people asking questions about this stuff. And I think that irked Obama badly. And so I think that Obama's motive for wanting to perpetuate this and do this and screw with Trump on this had a lot to do with personal payback. Personal payback to Trump for questioning whether Obama was an American citizen, whether the birth certificate was true or false or legit or not. It's awfully shady. A lot of people questioning that, and all of a sudden one day he puts up a birth certificate, shows up on his website. Fortunately, there was people who captured that before it was taken down the very next day, because what happens the next day? they captured bin Laden. Everyone's questioning his birth certificate for months and months and months. Finally, he puts it up on his website. Then the very next day, they capture bin Laden, and then the birth certificate on his website goes away. Very, very suspicious, don't you think? But no, I think that Obama's whole reason for being part of that specific little plot to screw with Trump was purely payback for questioning, being what people call the birther issue. Trump being one of those people questioning and being a part of that birther issue. I think that that's what that was. That's my personal opinion. I think that Durham may come to find that that's true, but I think there's other things much deeper and darker than that. But that was one of the motivating factors for Obama, I'm sure. Now, I'm going to go back to something else that we've been talking about. Now, the last couple of days, I've talked about the fact that there were really three things that were supposed to support the Trump-Russia investigation by Uncle Bob the Executioner and the Hillary donor posse. One of them was just the accusation largely coming from the so-called Steele dossier of Trump-Russia collusion. Then you had the Russians interfering in the election. That was based on the so-called Russian troll farm. The $2,950 worth of memes, most of them after the election. And then, of course, you have the CrowdStrike report, which supposedly made the argument that the Russians hacked the DNC systems and the DCCC and Podesta, sent the phishing email, the whole nine yards. Now they're backing away. It had been previously attributed to CrowdStrike also that the Russians had given the emails to WikiLeaks, but now CrowdStrike is, of course, backing away from that, saying, wait, whoa, we didn't have anything to do with that. All we did was identify the so-called two Russian actors, bad actors, in these systems and these networks, and that's all we're saying. We never said that the Russians gave anything to WikiLeaks, so they're backing away from that. But I've been talking about those three pillars the last couple of days, and the fact that two of them have been completely knocked down, and one of them now is on shaky ground, that being the CrowdStrike allegations. So I just want to go back very briefly and look at a couple things regarding, to sort of a memory refresher, some very peculiar, just a couple, there's many, but I just want to hit a couple of the more peculiar ones that were peculiar to me about the so-called Russians getting into the DNC systems. So, according to Jimmy the Weasel Comey, the former director of the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, the Comey Weasel stuff in his book, he says in his book that it was Dutch intelligence that had warned the FBI about the Russian cyber hackers trying to hack into the DNC. And, of course, again, this is in Comey's book. And he says that the FBI warned the DNC multiple times in 2015 and early 2016, yet the DNC took no actions. So think about that for a minute. You've got Comey, the FBI, I don't know about Comey personally, but the FBI warning the DNC and the DCCC that they're getting intelligence from the Dutch that the Russians are interested in hacking into the DNC and the DCCC. Well, now we know where the seed was planted. The idea that Russians would hack the DNC and DCCC. The idea that the Russians would hack the DCCC and the DNC came from Comey and the FBI. That's where the seed was planted, that a Russian hack may occur. Keep that in mind. Now, after being told this, according to Comey in his own book, multiple warnings to the DNC and the DCCC in 2015-2016 that they had learned from the Dutch that the Russians were trying to hack into the DCCC, the DNC. The DNC's told, they're both told about this, yet they took no action. They took no action, meaning the DNC, DCCC, being told multiple times, according to Comey, in 2015, 2016, the Russians are trying to hack your network. They do nothing. Then the DNC says that they were told about the Russian intrusions in May of 2016, and that these intrusions were committed by these bad actors, namely Cozy Bear and Fancy Bear, and that these characters got in both the DNC, the DCCC, and also were the ones behind the phishing email to Podesta's email account. Yet the Democrats continued. This is in Comey's book. Yet the Democrats continued to use that IT system, to use that network, even after they had been alerted, supposedly, about the cyber thieves. So now they've been told that the Russians are in their system, and they continue to use the system. And all CrowdStrike has done at that point is install some software. They say, install software that would help them find out if there were intruders in the network. They do. They find the are intruders in the network. It's Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear and the Russian actors. The DNC, the DCCC are notified of this, as is Podesta. Yet, they continue operating on the network. And, of course, the so-called thieves copy all the correspondence off that network, and we learn later that more than half of the files published by WikiLeaks were copied after the DNC knew that the so-called Russian hackers were in their network. So the DNC, the DCCC are warned that the Russians are trying to get in their network. They do absolutely nothing, take no action. Then, in May of 2016, they come out and proclaim, hey, the Russians hacked us. Yet we find out now that once they learned, or once they were told by these cybersecurity experts, CrowdStrike, that the Russians are in your damn network, they continue going on to use the network, continue to put information on their network, continue to do communications through the network, despite the fact that they've just been told that the Russians are hanging around in their network, copying all the data. What's wrong with this picture? I think that the DNC got the idea. Remember, at the same time this is going down, they got Alexandra Chalupa trying to tie the Manafort thing in Ukraine to Trump. So here they got Chalupa feed them all this garbage. Then all of a sudden, they get to the month of May and they go, hey, wait a minute. We've been told that the Russians are trying to get in our systems. Why don't we fake the Russians getting into our system? Why don't we make up a story that the Russians got in our system and then try to tie that to WikiLeaks and Trump? Because they knew someone was in their system, but it wasn't the Russians. It was Seth Rich. So they had to find a way to cover their ass on that. They knew that eventually Seth was going to release these documents to himself or give them to someone else who would release them. They would be caught with their tit in a ringer, and they would have to come up with some excuse. So they could deal with Rich some other way, but they needed to cover their ass. So they make up the story, and what better story than the Russians hacked their systems? And they got the idea because the seed was planted by Comey in 2015, 2016. So I think they got the idea from Comey and the FBI telling them that they were going to be hacked. Whether or not they were actually hacked or not, I don't know. I doubt it. But it could be. I don't know why the Russians would be interested in the DNC, the DCCC, supposedly to get opposition research that the DNC had on Trump. That doesn't make any sense to me, and that's why I question it. But anyway, if you're Durham or A.G. Barr, and you're looking at all these events, and when you put them all together, and then you look at it and just kind of follow it like a timeline and see all these things, it looks like it was a plot by the DNC to make up this story that the Russians hacked the DNC to cover for the fact that someone actually did get into their network, but it was actually someone on the inside who was going to release things that were going to be embarrassing. So to change the narrative from, one of our own got inside here and got this stuff and released it to prove that we were cheating his candidate, Bernie, and has now embarrassed us. You deal with him on another issue. You make up the fact that the Russians did it and they gave this stuff to WikiLeaks, and you tie it to Trump. Fits in perfectly with everything else that's going on. That's why I say you got to look at what's going on with Chalupa and what they were trying to do at that particular time, along with the fact that they knew that their system had just been compromised by someone on the inside who was probably going to leak damaging or embarrassing information. They had to deal with those issues. So they create a false narrative, then they deal with the actual person who got the stuff. That was Seth Rich. They deal with him in another way, and then they make up the cover story to change the narrative and to give them an excuse, and of course to flip the narrative. And then of course they tie it into the stuff that they're getting from Chalupa, so that it looks like it all fits together. So it was just another one of the many plots. One of the many plots. That's what that really is. That's what it looks like to me. I could be wrong, but I'm sure. But that's a conclusion I draw, and I'm sure that Barr and Durham will at some point draw a similar conclusion, because that's what it looks like. Now, I've been saying for a couple of days now that the resistance is about to end, and it's the coronavirus is forcing that. And I keep pointing out examples of it. Well, we had another example yesterday. We had, believe it or not, Ilhan Omar, one of the 4 horsewomen of the apocalypse, coming out and saying that Trump is showing unprecedented leadership. That's Ilhan Omar. Trump showing unprecedented leadership. Now, there is an election coming up, and that may be the reason for some of this, and then how popular Trump is in their districts where they're trying to get reelected. That probably has something to do with a lot of this, but there's probably other things going on as well. But either way, it's the resistance is dying, because it's hard to be part of the resistance at the same time the rest of the country is trying to pull together. You can't do both. You can't be in resistance mode while you're also in, hey, let's pull the country together mode. And you don't want to be in resistance mode right now, because that would look really bad to everybody, not just Republicans, independents, but Democrats as well. And so they're being forced out of resistance mode right into, a kumbaya moment. It's not what they want, but they have no choice. Okay, so that's my thoughts there. Of course, many of you probably saw the strange video yesterday, which is not unusual to see a strange Biden video, but it was pretty weird looking. This video where Biden's giving a speech, basically thanking all those people who voted for him. This was kind of his post-victory speech after the recent voting on Tuesday. And so he's standing there at the podium, at the microphone. He gives the speech, after which he stares blankly into space. He just, he finishes what he's going to say, and he just, stares into space. At which point, after a few seconds, his wife comes up to him and, kind of consoles him, gives him a kiss on the cheek and pats him on the chest and puts her arm around him, like he's having a moment, and she's trying to, console him or something. And then he looks very surprised. He looks at his wife like he's surprised and a little bit confused about what's going on. Then she walks away. He's still standing there for a second, looking quite confused. And then he just says, okay. And then he turns and slowly, in a real confused, sort of disoriented fashion, walks away. It was a very strange thing. But when I saw that, I watched it 2 or 3 times, and I was looking at his wife, and it's obvious to me that she certainly realizes that he's got some issues. And I'm really starting to think that she's something wrong with her. Why would you let your husband, have this experience? Why would you let this happen? Shouldn't she be saying, talking to him, saying, you shouldn't be doing this. We need to go see a doctor. But she's supporting the whole thing. And she knows better than anybody that he's not up to this. There's something strange, man, about these people. There really is. Of course, we also learned that the lawyer appointed by Judge Amy Berman Jackson in the Roger Stone case, remember, Cernovich exposes this juror, And so Berman Jackson appoints this attorney to represent these jurors. Well, we find out now that this attorney appointed by Berman Jackson, Alan Rawl, served on an advisory board with this lead juror, Tamika, whatever her name is. They served on a board together called the Center for American Democracy and Technology. Man, the corruption of that woman. She should be kicked off the court.